Okay, please welcome to the 29th session of the Conference of Parties of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change that is holding in Baku, Azerbaijan. My name is Sergei Rybakov and I am the Program Director of the Vostok Discussion Club and General Director of the Nature and People Foundation. Let me introduce to you our panel, Science and Education for Sustainable Development. Let me introduce our magnificent speakers today. Some of them are going to join us online, some of them are going to join us a little bit later because we're running as it's rush hour in the city. So, Olga Konovalova, Head of Biodiversity Department, Moscow State University, Marine Research Center. Ramon Pich Madruga, Vice Chair, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC. Tatiana Sokolova, Associate Professor, High School of Economics, School of Communications, Director of the Autonomous Nonprofit and Educational Center, High School of Economics. Vladimir Ruskov, Head of Climate and Environmental Issues for Sustainable Development Division, Department of International Organizations, Ministry for Foreign Affairs of Russian Federation. Our online speakers, Vladimir Mashkala, Head of the UN Environment Program, Russian Office. Sergei Raginko, Head of the Center for Ecology and Development, leading researcher of the Economic Research Department, Institute of Europe of the Russian Academy of Sciences. Vasily Savinov, Vice Rector for Strategic Development, Amosov Northeastern Federal University. And Stanislav Zhukov, corresponding member, Doctor of Science, Economics, Deputy Director for Scientific Work for Institute of World Economy and International Relations. Ramon, can I please start with you? IPCC is playing a crucial role in terms of the overall climate agenda. You are the ones who hold the scientific position and scientific agenda. Can you please give us a small update? Where do we stand? What is going on, and what role is playing by science in the climate negotiation process?
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this event, the invitation to be here with you this afternoon in this panel on science, education, and sustainable development. Firstly, I would like to say that the progress of science in the recent years has been assessed by the IPCC in its the last report of the IPCC. I mean the sixth assessment report, and that concluded in July last year. And in that sense, the IPCC, this was a particularly intense cycle. The R6 was a very intense cycle there. The three working groups submitted their contributions to the assessment, but in addition to that, three special reports were produced. One of them dealing with the global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius. Secondly, climate change and land. And the third special report was ocean and climate change. These three special reports were approved before the pandemics. And after that, I mean, the three working groups concluded their contributions. And finally, the synthesis report was produced following the procedures of the IPCC. There are some general messages that can be taken out of this assessment. Firstly, that the urgency of climate action, the importance of having this in mind. Secondly, the importance of the responses to be immediate, but also equitable. Thirdly, the impacts, the adverse impact of climate change for the accomplishment of the Sustainable Development Goals. And finally, the growing costs and risks associated to delay in responding to climate change. These are three aspects which are crucial in the context of the IPCC. Also, in that context, the IPCC recognized the report, and specifically the synthesis report recognized the interdependence between climate change, biodiversity and ecosystems, and human well-being and human societies. Also, the interconnection between adaptation, mitigation, and sustainable development, and the value of the various forms of knowledge, as well as the growing number of actors involved with climate action. These are four important aspects that I wanted to also highlight in this. There are some concepts which are very relevant in the context of the whole assessment. One has to do with the climate resilient development, which is integrating adaptation, mitigation, and sustainable development. There are, of course, constraints and enablers for this process. Among the key enablers are technology, finance, and international cooperation. And also the report highlights the importance of equity, inclusiveness, just transition, social justice as part of the governance, the governance and the in the general process of policy making as part of the importance of taking care of this. With regard to the education and climate change, it is good to recall that these are there is a two-way relation between education and climate science and climate change action. So I mean the education and climate action, there is a two-way relationship. On the one hand, having a quality and comprehensive education helps or contribute to climate action, and at the same time, equitable adaptation and mitigation is also benefits education. And this is highlighted in the report. In general, the report also attributes great importance to science, technology, and innovation as a key pillar also of sustainable development and international cooperation, as I said before. Adaptation was assessed in working group. Adaptation was assessed in working group 2, which is the working group dealing also with impacts, vulnerability, and adaptation. It was recognized in the assessment that concerning adaptation, actions in that regard, policy in that regard have increased in the recent year. However, there are still gaps and limits regarding adaptation. And the effectiveness of adaptation will be compromised with growing in global warming. I mean, because there is a point in which there are limits to adaptation, and because of that, we have a growing also amount of losses and damages as part of the whole process. There are also considerations with regard to maladaptation, how to avoid maladaptation through more flexible planning and effectiveness in the planning process, and also taking care of the local dimension of development, the local priorities when talking about adaptation, because the community, the local level is where the impacts are felt, and this means that this scale is crucial with regard to adaptation. You cannot apply homogeneously adaptation policies in the where you need to take into account these specificities, local the priority, the local conditions, the local particularities into account when talking about adaptation. There are also, with regard to mitigation, policies have been also increased. There are a group of countries in which even emissions have been declining. There are a set of group of cities and regions with net zero commitments, net zero emission commitment. However, we are not on track for limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, and this is one of the main findings of Working Group 3. And this has to do with the continued increase of the emission of greenhouse gases. In the last decade, assessed by the IPCC, in between 2010 and 2019, there was the dynamic of the growth reduced, but however, in absolute terms, the amount of emission was unprecedented, and this is one of the reasons why we are not on track for dealing with for limiting global warming to 1.5. There are positive signals in addition to this increased amount of countries and other entities with new commitment with regard to mitigation. In addition to that, the cost of some key mitigation technologies, like for instance, solar, photovoltaics, and wind energy and also the batteries for electric cars for passenger have been reduced, have reduced considerably this cost. But still the penetration of those technology is low, taking into account that the starting point was also very low. But there is a growing process in that sense with regard to the cost of the reduction of the cost, and also the penetration, the dynamic of this penetration into the market of these key technologies. And in general, these are the key findings with regard to mitigation, and also with regard to adaptation, and the synthesis report, which is the report which make a synthesis, as I said before, of the whole process. At the moment, we are in the preparation process of the 7th assessment report, and there are key steps in that process. Next month, the scoping meeting for the preparation of the contribution of the 3 working groups would be taking place in the Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And there, a proposal for the structure, the content of the 3 working groups is going to be made. And this proposal is to be considered in February by the government's members of the IPCC. In February next year, the structure of this contribution would be approved, and after that there will be a call for author to write these 3 contributions. So we are precisely in this moment, and also by February there is a pending discussion with regard to the whole duration of the process. I mean, this is more or less in general the point in which we are, and also to highlight that the current leadership of the IPCC has been insisting in 3 key pillars of the current process. One is the policy relevance, how to be much more policy relevant as a result of this assessment process. Secondly, inclusivity, how to incorporate new voices, new content, the new literature in correspondence with this broad variety of new actors, and also the recognition of the value of new forms of knowledge. And the third point is interdisciplinarity, how to reinforce this area also, including, for instance, social sciences, mainly social sciences, the knowledge of indigenous peoples and local communities. So these are 3 areas which are crucial at the moment with regard to the new assessment report. Also, this cycle include, in addition to the contribution of the 3 working groups, this cycle includes 1 special report dealing with climate change as cities that is in process of preparation. The authors are in the IPCC is in the process of selecting the authors for this special report, and the 2 methodological reports under the task force on inventories of greenhouse gases. And finally, just to conclude, to recall that there are different options for different organizations to participate in the IPCC as observer organizations, and also as part of the review processes. As observer organizations, they can nominate authors, and the review processes. In the review process is an open process in which experts can make comments and also provide additional literature that could improve the report.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ramon. So, and we are going to our online speakers. I want to welcome. Hold on. Vasily Savinov. Vasily, the most important event of 2024 was the approval of a strategy of implementation of youth policy in Russian Federation for a period up to 2030, which was developed on instructions of the President of Russian Federation following the State Council on Youth Policy in December 2022. Youth policy in Russia today is being adapted to the needs of the economy. The demand for its adjustment indicates by problems in the labor market. Vassily Mikhailович, please tell us how to train a professional specialist in the modern world, and what role, from your point of view, does the global issue of climate change plays in this process? Василий Михайлович.
Добрый вечер, уважаемые коллеги. У нас в Якутии уже 15 минут, без 15 минут 10 вечера. Очень рад вас приветствовать. Действительно, я полностью с вами согласен, то, что значительные изменения, которые происходят в образовательной деятельности ведущих вузов, университетов мира, они в большей степени направлены на то, чтобы обеспечить рынок достаточно конкурентоспособными кадрами, обеспечить растущие потребности экономики. Но в то же время, как показывают наши исследования, значительная часть университетов, как северных стран Европы, Северной Америки, ну также университетов Азиатского, Тихоокеанского региона, значительная часть из них в большей степени ориентирована на то, чтобы обеспечить устойчивое развитие своих регионов. Вот. В частности, если взять наш университет, то в 2021 году у нас была разработана программа развития нашего университета до 30 года. В основу данной программы легла концепция устойчивого развития, и поэтому все те 17 целей, цели устойчивого развития, которые приняты, они являются основой для развития нашего университета. Друзья, если вы зайдете на наш сайт, то вы увидите, что каждая новость сопровождается логотипом той или иной цели устойчивого развития. То есть это говорит о том, что вся наша деятельность, она полностью пронизана идеями обеспечения устойчивого развития северных территорий, само собой разумеется, и климатической повестки. Мы на данный момент реализуем 467 образовательных программ высшего образования, и из них все в прошлом году были полностью актуализированы под нашу миссию. Это подготовка кадров для обеспечения устойчивого развития азиатской зоны Российской Федерации и Дальнего Востока. И поэтому вот эти все 467 полностью актуализированы с учетом цели устойчивого развития. Но если брать, скажем, оригинальные программы, то есть такие интересные программы, как арктическое регионоведение, альтернативный транспорт, это технологические средства природообустройства, защиты чрезвычайных ситуаций и так далее. Но вы говорили о климате. В прошлом году у нас проходила очень интересная конференция по изменениям климата и таянию вечной мерзлоты. И в этом году, в сентябре, мы провели вторую конференцию. Друзья, как я вам сказал, у нас не только то, что сейчас уже почти скоро полночь, но и то, что наша республика находится в зоне вечной мерзлоты. И поэтому климат напрямую влияет то, в каких условиях мы будем жить. То есть меняется и ландшафт, меняются и температурные, и особенности какие-то геоморфологии и так далее. И больше всего то, чего мы боимся, то, что очень быстро растет скорость таяния вечной мерзлоты. Вот наш университет имеет интересный полигон, который находится за полярным кругом, называется Батагайка. И мы каждый год изучаем то, насколько увеличилась вот эта огромная впадина, основанная на том, что тает вечная мерзлота. И вот наши исследования, они в большей степени ориентированы на то, чтобы обеспечить достаточно хорошую жизнь населения и в условиях изменений климата, в условиях таяния вечной мерзлоты, и в связи с этим подготовки кадров, которые знают это все. Понятно то, что люди, которые не живут в условиях таяния вечной мерзлоты, они не будут знать, что у нас происходит. Поэтому наша задача обеспечить вот фундаментальную подготовку для наших студентов, которые будут потом уже работать в тех или иных условиях рынка, чтобы они знали особенности изменения климата и особенности тех условий, в которых будут работать, то есть тех условий, в которых будут происходить те или иные экономические изменения. Вот. И в связи с этим мы, как я вам сказал, изменили все наши программы образовательные. Мы проводим исследования достаточно серьезные. В частности, мы совместно с нашими коллегами, которые входят в Российско-Азиатский консорциум арктических исследований, проводим огромный проект, который называется «Изменения в арктических трансектах», по климатические изменения. И вот, в частности, я знаю то, что вот у вас сейчас в Баку находятся наши коллеги из других университетов России, которые участвуют в этом проекте. Вот. Это во-вторых, Б. И В – это изменение всей системы подготовки, чтобы наши будущие специалисты, нынешние студенты, они знали не только то, что будет, как меняться и как нужно действовать, но и это взяли за основу как ценность, ценность обеспечения жизни людей в условиях климатических изменений. Вот эти 3 пункта. И поэтому очень радостно то, что вы задали именно этот вопрос, который нас сильно волнует, и вопрос, который, видимо, будет волновать не только сегодня, но и завтра. И вся наша деятельность, вся работа, вся работа огромного университета, должен сказать то, что мы университет, который обеспечивает кадрами огромной территории. Это 3 миллиона квадратных километров. То есть 1/5 часть Российской Федерации. И вот для 1/5 части Российской Федерации мы должны обеспечить тех ребят, которые в будущем будут, работая в жестких условиях рынка, обеспечивать ценности и цели устойчивого развития. Если вкратце вот уложиться на те положенные мне 8 минут, будет так.
Спасибо. Спасибо вам огромное. Спасибо, Василий Михайлович, и хорошего вам вечера. Надеемся, что мы до вас доедем и с удовольствием посмотрим все, что у вас происходит. Я хотел передать слово
Спасибо.
Сергею Анатольевичу. Агенько, Сергей Анатольевич, нас слышно? Видно? Так, Светоч, у вас выключен микрофон.
Меня видно
Да?
и слышно? Отлично.
Да, здравствуйте.
Добрый день. So, let me begin by this. I just heard the colleague from IPCC talking about the possible involvement of social sciences. Since it's my specialty, I've spent my whole life in social and political science. And let me put it like that. First, it's very important that the climate change is the first global political agenda driven by science. And in my view, it must stay that way, so that political and economic efforts won't divert from the findings of science. There are cases where science could be more helpful in developing tools for climate policy. I mean, social science. Well, let me take just a few cases. Take the case of green financing. When we see green financing projects, we should see a lot of mitigation projects, GHG mitigations. But we won't see a lot of adaptation projects. But if we look at the Paris Agreement, we shall see that mitigation and adaptation do have the same priorities in the agreement. Why so? Why is the structure of green financing not in line with the Paris Agreement? In my view, it's a methodological issue. It's no secret that mitigation projects are easy to develop, since it's easy to calculate the GHG reductions. It's easy to monitor the results of the projects, easy to verify and report them. There are plenty of methodologies and other tools developed for this project type, but this is not the case for the adaptation projects. And here is a room for the science to develop respective methodologies and measurement and reporting and verification tools. Let me reiterate, policy must be science-driven, not vice versa. When we see policy-driven science, it's not a science, it's actually a policy tool. We in BRICS countries witness a lot of unrest about the carbon emissions in the countries with carbon-intensive industries. There is a lot of players that do like to blame the producers of carbon-intensive commodities for the global warming. But how about consumers of the same products? These consumers, these countries do offer carbon demand all over the world. Ain't they a part of the problem? Of course, these countries invented a concept of carbon leakage, and thus they defend the carbon border adjustment mechanism. It's a unilateral cross-border carbon tax, and this initiative is rejected by BRICS. But if we go down to science, let us speak about the carbon leakage concept. It's a doubtful concept. It's a source of trade wars in future. And therefore, there is a need to explore the issues of carbon demand all over the world. And exploring this issue, it will lead to more sustained view on the issue of responsibility for carbon emissions. And having said this, let me conclude with the hope that the climate change agenda will lead to a better world that will be not a new version of divided world, but a united one. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And we go to Olga Konovalova. So the question will be about science, education, and civilization. So what do we need to make science important and interesting to people, especially for youngest?
Thank you very much. Thank you for Arctic Pavilion and for colleagues. After Ramon, and I want to show a special case of adaptation to mobilization of young scientists. And for after the Sergei, it's a case where the policies is synchronized with science, because we started from the ministry, and universities. So of course, I think I need to say common words about that we, for successful development of mitigation plans and procedures for climate change, we need a very huge scientific background, and we need qualified scientific personnel. And I would especially like to draw attention that what we heard, for example, in Arctic, in the ocean and in Arctic here pavilion and everywhere, that we need to improve our assessment and develop mitigation measures, mechanisms, and technologies. But for this mechanisms, technologies is not enough. We need a deep scientific view and understanding of the processes, because we have a lack of it. It's obviously, especially maybe I'm biologist, and maybe I said this biology, that especially the lack of this understanding is our understanding of ecosystems and biodiversity loss and the complex ecosystem approach. So this is a problem. And of course, I think I need to say that last but not least, reason of this approach is that the feature science is that the science is an international phenomenon that is extremely important in our complicated world. So education and popularization of scientific careers are extremely important in accordance with our high-tech society and development. And social institution must unite to achieve our sustainable goals together. So I want to say that important not only to acquire knowledge, if we say about education, is to apply knowledge. So if we say about science, because it's important too, and education sometimes become a game, but not like real science. And the next that I want to say is scientific community and industrial professional community and educational institution often stay apart from each other, but both sides need to make significant efforts and the power to involve students in work and obtain scientific results, because educational people and scientific staff need to make special efforts to make the science real. And on the one hand, it's necessary to start involving students in science earlier, but in other hands, it's what it should be real scientific results. And therefore, we are actively developing a Russian program that called Floating University. The program itself got the name from 90s, where this project starts with UNESCO. It was the first floating university. It was a UNESCO program. And then recent years, since 2021, we combine the resources of all Russia in training and attracting people in the areas of marine sciences. It's ocean and atmospheric physics, bottom geology, marine biology, and underwater technologies. Program is aimed in involving students, school children, postgraduates, and young scientists in research activities in the field of marine science, promoting their early professional orientation and specialized training, marine training in the Arctic and the other seas, as well as the development of new scientific groups of young scientists. It's also our aim. And from 2022 to 2024, do you hear me? 62 organizations of various focuses were involved in this implementation of this program. And different partners, different years. It's a scientific organization and industrial, and of course educational. It's the main partners. Between them is a Marine Research Center too, and different partners who need to employ young scientists for growing knowledge of dynamical marine ecosystem. And leading scientists and scientific organization of Russia are involved in this implementation. We have a network winter school was held in 9 cities in Russia, and then the floating universities are mostly float in the Arctic. So we study dynamic ecosystems of Arctic and climate change also, and hydrophysical research and different aspects of climate, weather, and forecasting of ecosystems in Arctic. And under the program that in total 9 complex expeditions were carried out in the Arctic seas, Barents, Kara, Laptev, Baltic seas, and the Far Eastern seas. And we had a total of 7 1,000 applications that were submitted to participate in 3-year cycles of this program. And the followers are from the 150 universities in Russia. And 91 students complete this program, and they presented 103 posters and abstracts and 13 scientific conferences. And the main result that we are proud of, that according to our surveys, more than 80% of the program's graduates continue to work in the earth sciences. That is a very important result in the earth scientists everywhere, all over the world. And this is the whole thing is a result of the complex interaction between Ministry of Science and Higher Education, universities, Academy of Science, and commercial companies. And the next steps for developing this scientific and educational program is transformation into international program as science originally supposed to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Olga. Tatiana, can you just also explain how business is cooperated with education, how business can be involved in scientific research and working with the youth?
Thank you so much. I see we are growing. So thank you, dear audience. Thank you, Sergey. Thank you, dear panelists. And the most important issue and the most important topic I could underline talking in terms of cooperation is to answer the question, why? If we know this answer, why business should cooperate with the educational centers and institutions, and why should education be open-minded to business, we can find a nice results. So what we are doing at the Higher School of Economics, it's about one of the leading universities. If you don't mind, I will remove this. Maybe like that, it's better because I can hear myself. So in this case, the most important thing we should talk and communicate is the reason. And here at the in the Higher School of Economics, we have several programs. I'm the leader of the program, which is called Social Marketing. And it's a special discipline, which is mainly possible to choose from the students from brand reputation, research, communication studies, and advertising. So students are always connected with communication. And in this case, we are communicating with business, trying to solve their problems, and even the problems about reputation, about carbon emission, about the way they are hunting people, and even for their HR branding. And of course, we're doing research. And it's one of the aspects business is going to get this expertise from the academia. I'm sorry, I need to put it on, sorry. It's pretty complicated because you need also to controlate your pronunciation. So in this case, I should share with you some aspects we normally use at the Higher School of Economics. First of all, we promote the idea of service learning. What does it mean? If business come to the university with a special agenda, we are organizing kind of briefing for students. In this case, students have a special timetable how to work on the special project from business. So it's absolutely business unit, but working outside the business. And for a month or even for a year, depends on the program, students are working on a special case. For example, they're working with the reputation from the real business companies. In this case, they are conducting research later, they're working on a communication strategy, and of course, they're working with stakeholders as well. So in these aspects, I would make this bridge between your thesis about social sciences as one of the crucial areas to communicate with. And also, dear colleagues, so one more aspect I would underline is about the role of academia to solve the problem of climate action and climate change. And of course, here in Higher School of Economics, we're also measuring this effect, but communicating with students, we also underline the problem of measurement. So the second aspect, why business is so interested to go to the academia to find the answer, how could we measure this effect, but mostly not only about carbon emission, but about the reputation and the way we are communicating about sustainability in terms of communication in sustainability. And the last but not least thing is about creativity, because of course students are a kind of creative people, and they always have the solution to any problems. In this case, first we start with the research, later then they have this inspiration doing something and working on these strategic communications. They can afford to make an effort to solve a real business task in a very creative way. And that's the reason why here at our department, which is called School for Creative Industries, we are solving these problems. But another option I would love to discuss here at COPE, because I think it's absolutely impossible not to say about the fact we're here, and thank you very much for this panel, because we are here to raise the voice of academia. So, and in this case, we need to be visible. And listening to all of your incredible projects about the university, about the floating university, I do understand that we need promotion. So, and maybe it's not like maybe it's not an absolutely unique thing, and it's a kind of rhetorical question, but one of the most important thing business should go to academia and should communicate is to be visible to any of stakeholders. So talking about audience of youth, we also need to be visible for these people. While they're younger, we need to be visible on their own language. While they're growing up, we need to change the language and to be visible again. And it's like a process we could combine and we could promote during the whole life. And there is no difference if we're talking about the life of company or life during our whole life. And in this case, we're talking in terms of sustainability, ESG, and corporate social responsibility. So one more thing, business is so interested to go to academia to communicate about their brand and their corporate social responsibility, which is different to ESG, which is just like absolutely about econometrics and about their effectiveness. So reputation is one of the aspects we need to underline as a crucial thing to cooperate between academia and business. But there is also one more thing, and I would love to discuss it. We need some more promotion even with the state authorities, because talking about GR and governmental relations, we also need to be visible to all the stakeholders. Not only academia, but also the state should be involved to this process to promote the idea of necessity of sustainable education in each of the university on each of the levels. Never mind, we're talking about bachelor's degree or PhD students. They need to be involved to solve the real problems of business. And if they see that all of their ideas, or maybe any of them, are interesting and business is really interested to take these ideas, and students are feel this possibility to launch the campaign, not only to offer it, that's also one of the things which could we see like a reason for cooperation. So 4 aspects, just to sum up. First, to be visible. Second, to feel this trend of academia, because many of the solutions which could be possible to implement for business are originally from academia. So the thing number 3, which is the third one, is to feel the tendency. And the fourth one is to have a legal base to rise the voice of academia. So this question why, with which I've been started before, is like a doable thing. It's not just like one path. Not only business should be visible for academia, but also academia should afford all the issues and all the key tools to be visible for business. And in this case, we could solve the problem of cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tatiana. Thank you. And we're gonna have one more speaker, Vladimir Mashkala, that will join us online. Vladimir.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting me to take part in the panel Science and Education for Sustainable Development. Many colleagues know that UNEP is a sort of environment authority, authoritative voice for environment in the UN system. And in nutshell, UNEP is implementing 3 actions on what we can call triple planetary crisis. They are the climate action to deal with the climate crisis, nature action to deal with nature loss and biodiversity loss, and pollution action to deal with pollution and waste problems. Of course, these actions are interconnected, and they are also within the context of sustainable development. And the whole effort is to make the world more sustainable. As you know, triple planetary crisis, in a way, has become a bottleneck for human beings and sustainability for the long term. And the notion or narrative of the triple crisis starts from science. You might be well familiar with the assessment done by the Intergovernmental Panel, or the IPCC, and also Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, what we call IPBES, and UNEP's flagship publication of the Global Environmental Outlook. By 2019, through the quarter of the century period, we were able to convene global dialogue on the global assessments, bring all these assessments together, and to identify the synergies and coherent messages from all of these kind of assessment processes. And the narrative of the triple planetary crisis came from the key findings of the 25 global assessments. Of course, I'm fully aware that the topic is technology-full, sustainable development. And let me just turn to the topic as well. So basically, my first point is science and technology promote social and economic development and also improve human well-being and livelihood. And if you think about these revolutions, some 200-300 years ago, the Industrial Revolution, the Information and Technology Revolution, the Agricultural Revolution and Green Revolution, we have been through all these revolutions, and through each, the human beings benefited quite a lot. We grew our population and we increased our livelihoods and improved our lifestyle, etc. So, needless to say that without that science and technology, human beings would not have achieved so much. But this is the only one side of the coin. The other side of the coin, or my second point, is the side effects of this science and technology, and thus we are bearing the blame and suffering the crisis. Especially vulnerable other communities and least developed countries in Africa, for example, where UNEP headquarters is located. And that is perhaps the origin of the problem. We have to be aware that in the meantime, we must use science and technology to tackle these problems, to address the crisis. In the meantime, we also have to be aware of the environmental risk and the risk for human health from all this new technology. This is especially relates to artificial intellect technology, biological technology, and so on. Some 30-40 years ago, people thought about 2 kinds of technologies that would dominate our life and development. One is biological technology, and the other is what we call now information technology. Now we have it. I believe that we need to focus mostly on artificial intellect and how this can be used for our well-being rather than side effects. But there must be a kind of environmental impact, kind of protectional assessment before we put it in use. For example, solar radiation modification technologies are in the experimental stage, and the UN looks after this. Of course, if we use these technologies, it will mitigate the impact of climate change, but in the meantime, it could cause impacts on nature systems and human health. And this is the thing that we thought of the proper assessment of the effects for application of such technologies. We could hardly say, yes, go ahead, let's replicate, let's do it. This is a mean in a portfolio of mitigating climate change. So that is a typical example. And the third point that I would like to flag. Now we have in our hands great potential to basically resolve all these problems that we face. I mean, in the top, climate change. For example, our current technology potential is, to meet with the targets, basically to control the temperature increase under the 2 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial age, twice and even more. We have to be aware that these technologies are available for identifying the problem, tracking back to the sources of the problems and negative changes in biodiversity. Major determinant is the sort of political leadership. Why the world leaders are determined to take this up and to apply this technology and use them to tackle these problems. This does not mean that this will only benefit the environment. It could also benefit the economy, jobs, and everything. Green technologies should be usable, investable, and marketable. Political leadership is the key for taking up this new science and technologies for sustainable development. In the end, I would like to say that we need to develop this green science and green technologies for the green transformation of the society and for each and all of us as human beings. This is what we can do without the notion of sustainable consumption and production, which is the main driver of all these problems that I mentioned. I wish you every success in your debates, and thank you very much for your attention.
Volodya, thank you very much for your speech, and thank you very much to the program, United Nations Environmental Program, for their support, continuous support of what we're doing. So herewith, I want to thank all our fantastic speakers who were with us, and please follow the Arctic Forum, the Arctic Pavilion, and all roundtables that's going to be here today and tomorrow and until the end of this week. So, and there will be additional news from the 29th session of the Conference of the Parties of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. Take care about the climate, take care about yourself. Thank you. Have a good evening.